Hello, Mr. Gresham. Thank you for letting me interview you regarding Erikson's psychosocial stages of development. The purpose of this interview is for you to demonstrate your understanding of the theory and how the theory applies to you and students you currently teach or plan to teach. So imagine I have never heard of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Briefly explain salient features of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development and what are the sources of this information.
Well, Claire, thank you. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to having the opportunity to speak with you about the topic. Erikson's psychosocial theory of development is one I find extremely interesting and relevant, not only in my own life currently, but also I think it has a lot of application to the students that I work with, and youngsters of all ages. So, getting into the nitty-gritty of the theory, Erikson thought that there are 8 phases of psychosocial development in a person's lifetime, each of which generally poses its own crisis or conflict that the individual must somehow overcome. And it may very well be that in some instances, these crises are not entirely satisfactorily dealt with, and so then may rear the ugly heads again in the future. That sometimes at an inopportune stage of life. But getting into the stages, the first of which is occurs generally from birth to about the first year and a half of life, and this is the trust versus mistrust phase of life. So infants are, they're learning to build, their sense of the world around them, how they can trust, the big people that they see in their lives, and trust in themselves as well. And usually the first source of this is the mother figure who, typically is, is feeding the infant, nurturing the infant, clothing, changing diapers, etc. And so when this is a strong bond, when the mother figure is nurturing, constantly feeding, caring for the infant's needs, they really develop a sense of a close bond with that mother figure, of course, and if ever, unfortunately, honors and so on. Then phase 8 is lastly the integrity versus despair. So this is Erikson's last stage. This is late adulthood, and this is all about assessing one's choices in life, the path you've taken, the accomplishments, the people you've met and become friends with, accomplishments, failures. It's all part of the greater whole. And so this is where people, as they near end of life, they're determining, if I've led a good life or if I haven't led a good life, and so on. And hopefully they have, and they can rejoice in what they've accomplished. So.
Great. So at what stage of development do you see yourself at now, and why do you believe this?
Quickly, I wanted to say that the sources of those were from Erikson's books, Identity, Youth, and Crisis from 1968, and then Identity and the Life Cycle from 1980. Those are both published under the Norton masthead. So personally, I see myself in the 7th of Erikson's stages. I have 3 children, whom I love very much, and my wife and I are doing our best to guide them on their life journeys, based on our self-knowledge, personal successes and failures, and so forth. We're very proud of the people they're becoming, and look forward to watching them develop into good citizens of the world. And furthermore, I've taken the path of becoming an educator myself. A handful of teachers in my past were influential in my development as a person, and I want to repay that.
Explain how being at this stage of development may influence your behavior and outlook in your classroom. On what do you base this explanation?
So as I strive to become a great teacher, I'm always mindful of the diversity in my students on a daily basis. I try and bear in mind that some of them are coming from less ideal circumstances and may not have the opportunities that I had in my own life. And so I just work very hard to be equitable, fair, and open-minded to their circumstances. I know that the opportunity I have to mold these students into good people, is a tremendous responsibility and is one I take very seriously.
So, identify at what level your stages are likely to be at in Erikson stages.
So my students, okay. So my goal is to teach high school students. That I think places them squarely in the identity versus role confusion. So stage 5.
Explain how being at the stage of development may influence their behavior and outlook in your classroom. On what do you base this explanation?
So I've already seen hallmarks of the 5th stage of development in the short time that I've taught. So kids in this phase may be acting out in class, to gain approval from their peers, or they might be keeping a low profile, so as to not attract attention to themselves, or they might be working very hard, in their academics because they're trying to, meet either internal expectations or external expectations. What makes this phase so interesting is the diversity of behaviors that are exhibited, right? These kids are really trying to figure out who they are, and so they're trying on all manner of identities. Some of them already know who they are. They've got their path completely laid out, for the next 15 years. And others, they might not have a clue yet. So it's a tremendously interesting period. All of it is okay.
What might be some disconnects between you and your students, keeping the differences in the 2 stages in mind?
So I made a comment to one of my classes last year about how I became complacent in my previous career, right? Maybe wasted some time in moving on from it. So that could have been time that I might have used better, towards pursuing a career like teaching that, could have been infinitely more gratifying to me. So we'd recently watched Dead Poets Society, and I was trying to impress upon them the notion of carpe diem, seize the day. And I'm not entirely sure that all of them were picking up on it in that moment, but I realized that sometimes it's not possible to see the way forward at any given moment in time. We just have to make decisions based on the current information and the life experiences we have up to that point, and just let the chips fall where they may. So my students that just haven't had the breadth of life experiences yet that an adult my stage of life have, and they may make choices that are either frustrating to them at the time or to their loved ones, but they're learning from them. and hopefully they get there, right? Um, but at the same time, via technology, they are exposed to more ideas, concepts, experiences than any generation previous in history, and so that is something that we need to bear in mind also. It's uh, this, I think, is the great unknown, at this for this age, and it's something that we need to keep in mind.
So to wrap up this discussion, do you have any final comments?
Yes. As a parent and as a future educator, I find Erikson's theory to be, just a very helpful guide in making choices about how I'm raising my own children, or conducting my classes, and in a way, I'd find them quite comforting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, no problem.